I'm 30 years old and my wife Laura is 25. We've been married for 3 years and together for almost 6. We don't have any kids or significant assets, just more debt than cash in our checking account. We rent a house, and I'm the primary breadwinner, bringing in roughly $4,000 a month, while Laura nets around $1,500. I work my butt off to give her the life she's used to, and now I'm facing something unimaginable. My work family is pretty tight-knit. A co-worker invited me to join a recreational soccer league, which I've been part of for 2 years now. Laura used to attend every game, which I thought was her way of supporting me. But in the back of my mind, I suspected she just went for the alcohol that was always around. Most nights I'd take it easy on the drinks, but she, as a spectator, would get pretty loose and then ride home with me. After the games, some of us would hang out at different places, sometimes at our house, sometimes at a bar or pizza joint. Well, a couple of weeks ago, a group was planning to get together at one of the guys' houses a city away. I told them I couldn't go because I had work early the next morning. On the ride home, Laura texted one of the guys I considered a buddy, asking him to give her a ride to the party. She then asked me if it was okay for her to go. I said no, I had work in the morning, and I wanted to be with her that night. She gave me the silent treatment, clearly angry and drunk. When we got home, a car pulled up in front of the house. It was my buddy. Laura had decided on her own to go to the party. I was furious. I went to my buddy's car and told him I wasn't okay with this and that he should leave. But Laura got out of our car and into his. They drove away. In my rage, I plugged in the old iPad I had bought for her years ago. It was old, but I knew it was connected to her messaging and social media accounts. I saw exactly where she was and tried to stay up, but I eventually fell asleep around 3 a.m. She still wasn't home. When I woke up the next morning, she was in our bed. I didn't know when she had come home. I got ready for work and left without waking her or kissing her goodbye, the first time that had ever happened. I wanted her to know I was pissed. Before leaving, I grabbed the iPad and threw it in my briefcase. At work that day, after a meeting and a few phone calls, I pulled out the iPad. It lit up with a notification from a messaging app. Buddy is typing. I opened the app and saw a horrific exchange of messages that were supposed to self-destruct. But this app version must have been outdated because I was able to witness their conversation in real time. My buddy was making references to them having sex and how much fun the other guys had last night. I nearly lost it, but then it got worse. I watched as my wife instructed my buddy to send her a video of him masturbating, which he obliged. I unfortunately witnessed the whole thing. I ran out of my office into the bathroom and vomited profusely. I was shaking from what I had just seen and got permission to leave work for the day. After taking several hours to calm down, I was legitimately afraid I might hurt someone or myself. I drove home to find her still sleeping in our bed. I put my stuff down and asked her to come downstairs. I sat across from her and asked her to tell me in detail everything that happened the night before. She did, but omitted any mention of sexual activities, just drinking, playing pool, and talking. That was it. I then asked her when she had last spoken with my buddy. She said she had messaged him back and forth a bit that morning, but nothing significant. Then I dropped the bombshell. Would your story change if you knew I watched the entire conversation you had with him this morning? She burst into tears, and the first thing out of her mouth was, "Are you leaving me?" She came clean, telling me she couldn't remember everything clearly, but she admitted she had sex with my buddy and another teammate the previous night. She said that's all she could remember, but added there might have been more guys. I was disgusted. I asked if this was the first time, and surprisingly, she told me there had been other instances, one even in our house while I was sleeping upstairs. That was it. I was so numb. I helped her pack a bag and she left to stay with her family, pleading with me not to tell anyone. Now I'm alone in this horror story, 2 weeks out from discovering the truth, with no idea what to do. I hope I don't have the worst Discovery Day, D-Day experience. But it's hard to imagine anything worse than catching your wife in a gangbang scenario with guys you've welcomed into your lives and realizing it's been going on for months with at least one of them. Now she wants to blame it all on alcohol, swear she's going to start AA, and go through couples therapy. She wants us to come out of this together. I think it's too late, but I feel the full range of emotions, including guilt. I don't know why. I have a meeting with an attorney tomorrow, and I like to think I'm making the right move. No matter how broken she is over being an alcoholic and really wanting to work this out, I can't even talk to her without imagining her as the center of a sickening scene. I can't trust her. I'm disgusted by her repeated actions. I deserve a heck of a lot better than that. I'm not perfect, but why in the hell do I feel so guilty? There's no reconciling this, right? I'm not the bad guy, am I? Any support or words of wisdom would be greatly appreciated. But it's not easy to just stop caring about someone you love, even after being completely and fully blindsided. Please take it easy on me. Before we get into the next update, I can assure you that I am not the bad guy. I don't accept alcohol as an excuse either. She cheated multiple times with multiple people and kept it from me. She's only sorry because she got caught and now realizes her actions have consequences. Even if I could deal with the cheating, I couldn't deal with the lying and secrets. That's where the trust really dies, in my opinion. I asked her outright what happened that night, and she offered no information until I said, "That saw the messages. I'll get the best lawyer I can and tell my family about what I'm going through. I need their support and someone to talk to." All right, first update. Unfortunately, this situation has gone from horrific to unbelievably evil. There isn't a word that does it justice. I made a few appointments with attorneys and one with a legal document preparation lady to keep my options open. My wife had no knowledge of those meetings. We went a few days without direct contact, but she was adamant that this time she was really going to make an effort to get us into a marriage therapist, which I had been insisting on for months before my D-Day, to see if there was any way to work through this. But I knew in my heart what my choice would inevitably be. She did succeed in getting us on a therapist's schedule, but it was going to be about a week and a half until we could get in. During that time, I was literally stalking her every move from that damn iPad. I was obsessing over it, watching every message come and go, checking Facebook, Snapchat, everything I possibly could. After a week and a half of scrutinizing her every move digitally, I had no further evidence, and I thought perhaps she was showing true remorse. When it finally came time to see the therapist, he sat us down and asked us why we were there. I told her to tell him the story in her own words. She left out some details, but most of it was there on the table. The therapist turned his head to me after hearing it all and asked, "How does this make you feel about your trust in her? How does it make you feel about your marriage?" I just shook my head in disbelief and shock. Instead of answering his question, I replied, "If I don't say it out loud right now, I'm afraid I never will. There's no coming back from this for me. This marriage, is over. The vows are broken, my trust is shattered, and I think the only thing left to do is to get a divorce." My gut wrenched, and she completely broke down into hysterical crying. I continued, "I don't know what can be salvaged from this relationship, but the marriage is over. I meant what I said at the altar, and I'm not being true to myself if I don't recognize this as being broken and unfixable." At that point, I felt a slight sense of relief, having stated it out loud in front of her, and a neutral party that I was done. The remainder of the therapist appointment was spent with him explaining to her why my feelings and my decision were completely rational, given the situation, and calming her down. It actually couldn't have gone better in my opinion. He insisted upon seeing us not as a couple, but separately, to see if he could help us as individuals first, and maybe, on the horizon perhaps years from now, bring us together for discussion of reconciliation. I'll say it right now, so you don't have to worry. At this point, I don't have even the slightest intention of ever considering reconciliation, but at least in the meantime, the individual therapy might actually do me some good. Now, before I continue, I knew at this point I was about to embark upon a legal journey which, if not amicable, could be disgustingly ugly and financially devastating to me, the breadwinner, in a no-fault state. The overarching point of the legal process is that I have to keep things amicable right now. Let's fast forward roughly a week and a half. By now, we've both had at least one individual therapy session, and her narrative to her entire family is that we're ending the marriage because of the breaking of vows, but we're both trying to heal ourselves right now. She's still staying with family, and I continue my obsession with constantly searching her digital presence for any sign that she was continuing her disgusting habits. As many of you had suggested she would, not saying it's your fault, I would have been searching anyway. It wasn't until one night last week that I realized there was a place I hadn't ever checked, the App Store. I went to the app download history of the iCloud account, and saw that almost 2 weeks prior to that evening, she had downloaded a secret texting app onto her phone. My gut wrenched. I realized in one foul swoop that this entire time she had gone out of her way to hide some sort of messaging from me, knowing that I had her iPad, which she insisted upon me keeping so I could begin to trust her again. But I really think to this day that she didn't realize that an app downloaded on one iCloud device can be seen in the history from the iCloud-connected device. I needed to know what the communications were within that app. I wasn't even in control of my body thinking back to those moments. I downloaded the app onto her iPad, tried a few of her most common login combos, and voiled the truth. She not only had been messaging Buddy on this app since after our first therapy appointment together, but they had been continuing to have sex with one another during times when she knew I'd be out of the area. I puked. I cried. It was 3 a.m. on a weeknight. I went into the restroom and started grabbing all the prescription-strength medications I could find. I went back into my room with an overflowing handful of assorted pills that, without a doubt, would have been effective in ending my life. I sat on the edge of my bed, sobbing, ready to end it all. I picked up my phone and tried to call my mom. No answer. My dad, no answer. Finally, my sister answered. I told her what I had just discovered, through violent outbursts of tears, and she could tell I was on the verge of losing it. She didn't know I had the pills in my hand, but she insisted on keeping me on the phone, albeit in the middle of the night, until I had calmed down. It took about an hour, but I was finally numb again. After hanging up the phone, I went back into the bathroom, poured the pills back into one of the bottles, washed my hands, and returned to bed to try to get at least a couple of hours of sleep. That never came. As hours passed, I realized I needed to go to work. I couldn't stand to be in that house or that moment any longer. As I got dressed, I threw the bottle of pills into my briefcase along with the iPad, both of which I promptly gave to my most trusted coworker upon arrival at the office. I asked him to lock them up in his desk and not return them to me no matter what. No questions asked. He obliged and gave me an understanding pat on the shoulder as I walked away. So now I've done it. I got what I was searching for, undeniable proof that not only is my wife a cheater, but she's also a cold-blooded liar. I struggled for days on end, trying to decide what to do with the information I had discovered. On one hand, I wanted so badly to call her out to every possible family member, friend, or acquaintance, and let the whole world know what she truly is, what she had done, and what she was continuing to do. But I couldn't. I already had the process underway for ending the marriage, but there was still a time window where she could choose to get nasty and make it costly. As days went by, and more texts, calls, and attempts to communicate with me went unanswered, she finally went out of her way to stop by and check on me. I nearly lost it completely during the encounter. I was vague and seemingly indifferent to her. I didn't know exactly what to do. It wasn't until she lost her temper and started yelling at me for acting weird that I gave her a chance and asked her point blank, "Have you had any contact with Buddy whatsoever since that night?" Her response, "No, I blocked him on everything." I asked again, "Are you sure about that?" She adamantly proclaimed that she hadn't, that he was gross, and she would never do that to me. She could never do that to me. Then I dropped the bomb. "So what about this app? And what about this video I took on my phone of that app, showing the conversations you two have been having this whole time, the pictures you've sent to one another, the plans you've made to sneak around based on my daily schedule?" She collapsed onto the ground, sobbing, crying, and begging me for what? I don't know. I kept my tone indifferent. "So here's what's going to happen. I'm not going to tell anyone about this. And in exchange, you're not going to fight me at all about anything in the divorce process. I'm going to be fair, even though I shouldn't have to be, but you're going to be served with the divorce papers and then do nothing with them. Otherwise, people will have to know about this situation and why it is that I'm being so unreasonable. Your choice." She left, and 2 days later she was served. Since that day, I've kept my word and haven't told anyone outside of my immediate family members. But I know for a fact, using Find My iPhone, that she has visited him every single night since then at the house where he lives with his mother. Her family thinks she's going to Alcoholics Anonymous meetings every single night, but my screenshots of her location during the meetings prove otherwise. Seriously, why the hell hasn't she changed her iCloud password? I don't know why I keep compiling the evidence, but I do. I struggle right now with the anxiety of waiting for this period of time to pass, until her right to fight me in court has expired. All the while knowing her family thinks she's on the right path, when that couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, she's lying to every single one of them. What hurts me the most right now is the injustice of it all. She gets to be around people, her family, and act like everything is on the up and up every day, then run off each night to have sex with him, sneaking home in the middle of the night to keep up appearances. Meanwhile, I go to work each day, head home to an empty, mentally haunting house, and experience how it truly feels to be alone in every sense of the word. I'm past the feelings of ever considering self-harm, but these are dark days nonetheless. I'm taking everything hour by hour, day by day, until the day comes that I have the reassurance of knowing I'll make it out of this hell without my finances being destroyed and can officially leave her in the dust. What I'll do from there, I truly don't know yet. I'm just trying to survive until that moment comes. All right, time for the second update. At long last, my divorce is official. No more need to hide out. After waiting the absurdly long 6 months and 1 day cooling off period to see if my ex-wife lawyered up without me knowing, it's done. I've gone completely no contact, and I feel like I'm finally able to start progressing forward in my life. I followed the advice of many kind people who suggested that I give her back the iPad and sever any ties to devices and accounts that would allow me to obsess over what, where, and who she was doing. I knew enough. I knew what I wanted. Out. My approach to the divorce process may have hurt me more emotionally in the long run, but it didn't hit my pocketbook with nearly as much long-term impact, and it all seemed to make sense in real time as this transpired at an agonizing snail's pace. After coming to terms with the fact that this woman could never be trusted again in my life, I knew that I had to be rid of her. But I wasn't going to pay her month over month for half the length of the marriage, to the tune of roughly $2,000 a month in spousal support. We didn't have children together, for crying out loud. As my state would have had me do, being a no-fault divorce state and me being the breadwinning spouse, no way, no how was I paying her a cent for what she had done to me. So I got angry, gave it some thought, and devised a plan to get out of this marriage and away from her as quickly and fully as possible. Looking back, I am not proud of the tactics I used to navigate my divorce, but it worked out in the end. However, I do feel my integrity or moral high ground may have taken a hit, a matter of opinion, I suppose. From my point of view of fault and responsibility, my actions were molehills compared to the mountains of mistrust, hurt, and anguish she caused me. I already had the divorce papers prepared and submitted to the county, but was awaiting their confirmation. I kept this from my wife, who was still living with her family. She was never welcome to stay in my home ever since I first made her leave. I had arranged a few times for us to meet up and talk. I wanted to convince her that somehow, some way, I still wanted to try to find a way to salvage the relationship, a complete lie. My real intention was to keep her in the dark about the divorce proceedings and her potential right to contest and demand spousal support. By pretending to work on the relationship, I bought myself enough time to get through the cooling off period and finalize the divorce without her fighting me on financial grounds. I know this may seem deceitful, but compared to her betrayals, it felt like a small price to pay to ensure my financial stability. In all of our discussions, I made it clear that, in my mind, this marriage, was over. The vows had been broken, and if we truly wanted to start again, we would need to start fresh. We would need to mutually end this marriage and then begin dating one another again, courting and finding our way into a new, stronger relationship. I still can't believe she bought this. In fact, I was going to go out of my way to make it as easy and painless as possible for her, hurrying the process along and keeping it out of the public eye to just get through this phase so we could focus on the next together. A prime example of this was how I had her served. We had a mutual friend come over to my house, the house we had lived in together, and play third wheel in the handoff, signature exchange, and conversation. She signed the paper she needed to, sealed up her documents in the envelope they came in without even scanning through them. I doubt she ever really did dig into the minutiae of those tedious legal forms, because I painted myself a very pretty picture, completely absent of any spousal support beyond splitting what was in our account at the time. This was the single largest issue that I wanted to avoid, paying her spousal support. Over the first few months, I tried to write out the "I need time on my own to think" card pretty hard to avoid seeing her, but met with her roughly 2 times a month to have dinner, or meet up in a public place to make small talk and act like I gave a crap. These meetings were always in a public place, so she would never be able to say I tried to do something to her. I kept up appearances. I played her on. I made her feel like I was truly working through my emotions and coming to grips with what happened, and seeking the ability to forgive so we could reconcile when I had absolutely no intentions of doing so. By keeping her led on, I was able to cleanly remove her from my bank accounts with her actual assistance in doing so, have her removed from the lease, and even got all of her possessions moved out of our house into a storage unit. I convinced her that we would get a new place together, and having her stuff out of the house would make the house feel a lot less haunting to me as I healed. Lying to her and keeping her in this state of submission and cooperation made all the difficult separation tasks insanely easy, and she thought she was doing the right thing for us. This strategy got me through about 4 of the 6 months I needed to get through until I reached the light at the end of the tunnel. It wasn't until sometime in early month 4 that I received a text message from a family member she was living with, asking if we were still working things out. This family member knew about Buddy and the truth of the story, but to keep up my reconciliation charade, I replied with a yes. Why? And I received back a picture of my wife and Buddy having dinner at a restaurant a city away with a follow-up text saying, "This is happening right now." It just so happened that this family member was meeting up with coworkers for drinks after work and spotted them together. Seeing that picture made my blood boil. She was still lying to me and everyone else, pretending to be remorseful while sneaking around with Buddy. This revelation solidified my resolve to see the divorce through and ensure that she didn't get a cent more than she deserved. This is where I completely messed up by letting my emotions get to me. I texted my wife right then and asked if she could talk on the phone. She replied with a lie that she was in an AA meeting and would call me as soon as she was out. That's when I lashed back with, "I didn't know they held AA meetings in restaurant name and that Buddy was now your sponsor." That got her attention. She called me immediately, yelling and accusing me of stalking her. I replied with some choice words that mods definitely won't allow on this sub, basically telling her off, calling her names, and making it clear that I had absolutely no interest in speaking with her ever again. Thus, the last 2 months of the divorce resulted in her being in a relationship with Buddy, which was private at first, but eventually became public. I had blocked both of them on all social media, but through various friends, information trickled in. Questions arose, and more people started contacting me wanting to know what was going on. Apparently, my wife was getting bolder and posting status updates and pictures of the two together. If someone reached out to me and asked, I would tell them as much as they wanted to know. The friendships and relationships I truly valued and wanted to salvage, I had to get on my side. It didn't take more than telling them the truth to do the trick. Having the support behind me and hearing people who knew us both acknowledge that what she did to me was horrific felt more important than the material division in the divorce itself. In those moments, I finally had people to vent to, and boy did I vent. Almost everyone I spoke with about what happened had communicated with her first in one way or another to find out who this guy was she was posting all these pictures of. A common denominator arose from each of those follow-up calls to me. She drastically downplayed the events that had occurred, though to the best of my knowledge, she didn't deny that she was the one who cheated. I was more than obliged to fill them in on the details she chose to leave out. Every one of our friends and most of her closest relatives were in shock, and I truly believe they chose and continued to choose to support me. I found myself asking them not to rock the boat until the divorce was finalized. The more time that went by where they were together, the bolder the pictures became, the more public they went with their relationship, and the more my phone rang. It came to the point that I had to ask people to please stop informing me of their developments because it was still causing real emotional pain. Valentine's Day happened to be just a few days before the finalization of the divorce. Along with the day of love came 3 screenshots from 3 different people, all of the same social media post. The 2 of them embraced, along with a romantic description about how amazing God is to deliver such a wonderful man into her life, and that she couldn't be happier, and that she literally hopes he is a man she'll marry someday. Seeing that post was like a punch to the gut. The sheer audacity of her flaunting their relationship publicly, especially on Valentine's Day, right before our divorce was finalized, was beyond painful. It made me realize that she never truly understood or cared about the depth of the hurt she had caused. In those moments, the support and validation from my friends and family were my lifeline. They kept me grounded and reminded me that I deserved better. Despite the pain, I knew that I had made the right decision in ending the marriage and moving on. Their encouragement helped me focus on rebuilding my life and looking forward to a future without her. I would like to say it doesn't bother me, them being together, but it does. Deep down, I still feel a deep sense of loss, but now I also feel an absolute sense of pure disgust and regret at how ridiculous, grotesque, and cold-hearted this woman is. I feel sick for not being able to see this monster right in front of me for so many years, not to mention what a despicable human being Buddy is. I truly have no respect or energy to comment or worry about him. He's sure to get hit by the karma train sticking around with her. My ex-wife, someone I truly feel like I do not know anymore, is making it a bit easier for me to move forward. The day finally came last week, when the court-appointed date for the dissolution of our marriage arrived. I hadn't been served any papers, and her opportunity had passed to fight me for anything we had listed in the agreements we last drafted when we were still going to try again. I was able to keep my entire 401k, no spousal support, no additional debt in my name, no lawyers, no court, no having to ever deal with this person ever again. At the end of the day, I blocked her number from my cell phone. The next day, 7 of my closest friends, 6 of whom were friends of both of us, threw me a divorce party, which they posted on Snapchat throughout the night. It was truly a celebration worth documenting and earned every single one of them a complete social media block from my ex-wife and a few nasty texts to some of them. Her maid of honor was at my divorce party and wants nothing to do with her ever again. This is one final internal struggle I'm having. Maybe someone can offer some insight. Back during the D-Day obsession period when I was scouring her digital footprints, I stumbled upon the fact that she had been sleeping with a man from her hometown while all of this was going on. The thing is, this guy is an old flame of hers, but has a wife and a kid at home. I truly struggle with whether or not I need to find a way to make sure the wife knows. I feel ashamed I haven't said anything to this point, but the thought of destroying a family and having that on my conscience is something that I have not yet been able to rationalize. Do I find a way to tell her? Do I identify myself? Do I keep this to myself? The situation is a worm in my head that is persistent and literally making me nauseous, anxious, and having nightmares on occasion. Any advice would be appreciated. Now it's time for the final update. After the divorce was finalized in February of 2019, I tried my best to go no contact, but that's easier said than done nowadays. I didn't speak to her or anything like that, but every now and then I might see a post from a distant family member of hers that I hadn't yet blocked, or a friend would unintentionally mention something they saw on a mutual friend's Snapchat, things along those lines. All of my true friends tried their best to keep these types of updates to themselves, but some news was too big to hold back. The first blockbuster came in May of 2019, when one of my best friends called me to tell me that my ex-wife was getting remarried to a guy from Tennessee. Wait, what? Yeah, it was true. My friend's husband had yet to block my ex-wife on Facebook and was able to take screenshots of the events that transpired leading up to the big news. Mind you, this all took place between March of 2019 and July of 2019. Apparently, Buddy and she didn't last too long after the divorce was finalized. I don't know the specifics about that or how it ended. I kind of wish I did, but it's not surprising in the least. Starting in April, a string of status updates on Facebook alluded to everything happening for a reason and subversive hints that she was falling in love with someone. Poor soul. Then, seemingly out of nowhere in July, a simple picture and caption were posted on her wall. The picture was of her and some random dude none of us knew or had heard of, standing in a courthouse holding hands, rings on fingers, holding up what must have been a marriage certificate, geotagged in California. She proudly updated her new last name with a caption saying something along the lines of, "Excited to start the rest of my life with such an amazing man. Feeling so blessed. Look out, Tennessee, here we come." I simply could not stand the intense curiosity of the situation. I reached out to one of my ex-wife's cousin-in-laws, who I got along with pretty well, to get the rest of the story. He obliged. Her new husband was someone she had met online and had been talking to for a few months over the phone, texts, etc. Apparently, they both fell hard and fast for one another, and he proposed to her on a phone call. She said yes, and they simply couldn't wait. Within a week of the proposal, in a serious attempt by her to inform her family and invite them to attend, the wedding took place in a very random town, about 2 hours away from our hometown. For some reason, I do not know, he flew out to California, and the marriage took place on a Saturday. That day also turned out to be the first time that they had met face to face, but they were now man and wife. The kicker, according to the cousin, was that the entire family was blindsided. Most of them found out through her hastily arranged Facebook post after the fact. To say they were shocked would be an understatement. I couldn't help but feel a mixture of emotions, relief, disbelief, and a bizarre sense of closure. It was as if her whirlwind decisions had somehow vindicated my own experiences. Her actions, from the betrayal with Buddy to this sudden rash marriage, painted a clear picture of who she truly was. While I still felt a twinge of loss and regret, it was now overshadowed by a profound sense of clarity. This was not the woman I had married, she was a stranger, and her impulsive behavior only solidified that fact. The fact that not one person from her family attended the courthouse wedding, whether that was due to the lack of time to plan or a lack of respect to attend, meant they were married unceremoniously, something I'm sure would have bothered the heck out of her. That Sunday was spent packing a moving truck with all of her belongings, and they set off east for Tennessee on Monday. I couldn't believe it. I've heard it from enough people by now to know that the story and timeline are true, but it was simply unbelievable at the time. That poor, poor man. If only he knew. I'm sure if he did know, he would have had the presence of mind not to get married in California, a no-fault state, where he could fall into the same situation I was facing with her. Hopefully, he was simply not informed rather than being that stupid. For the time being, I did the best I could to shake the idea of both of them from my mind, but I found solace in knowing that they were moving far, far away, where I wouldn't have any chance of randomly running into her ever again. Summer came and went in 2019, but right in the middle of fall, another bombshell dropped. While thumbing through Instagram, a video crept up on my screen of my ex-wife holding a plate in front of her father, with him covering his eyes with his hands. Before I realized what I was looking at, I saw that on the plate sat a single cookie covered with blue frosting. My ex-wife's voice came through, counting down. 3, 2, 1, it's a boy. As her father uncovered his eyes, it was a freaking gender reveal video. Why am I seeing this? Her mother had just created an Instagram account, completely public, and posted this video of her husband's excitement. Apparently, Instagram's algorithm thought I'd like to see this video from someone I may know. I completely lost it. That was actually a really bad set of days and sleepless nights. The sickened feeling I had was a mix of disgust, pain, frustration, and even a bit of jealousy. One of my great aspirations in life is to become a father, and had all this not happened on her previous timeline, this very well could have been the time that we had a child together. It could have been my child. I could have been the one becoming a father. I'm 32 years old now. I thought I'd be a father by now, much less not even on a path toward having a relationship, let alone a child. I'm a mature man and realize that I do have time ahead of me to achieve that dream with someone I love and am happy with, but I can't stop myself from comparing where I am in life to where I thought I'd be by now. All I can say for certain is that in this particular scenario, I'd very much rather be in my position than the soon-to-be fathers. I imagine that by now the baby is probably born. I've had the good fortune and good company of those around me to not have heard either way. I know this is the preferable position to be in, not knowing, than the alternative, but I can't help but wonder every now and then. The good news is that when I really think about it, there are more and more days now that she and her dumpster fire of a life do not cross my mind whatsoever, and I consider that progress. There still are bad days, which are made exponentially worse by random reminders like that video, but I'm learning to cope.